All right. Hello and welcome everybody to Online Office Hours with the Smithsonian Learning Lab. My name is Tess Porter and I'm an educator and digital content producer here at the Smithsonian Center for Learning and Digital Access. And I'm excited to be here with you today. So if this is your first time joining us, we are in these online office hours are held just about every Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. You can find out more about this and other professional developments on the URL here on the screen, as well as our Help Center, which I can show you in just a moment. These online office hours are a great time to pop in if you have a question about the Learning Lab and need some help. So I can help with a lot of different types of things. I can help with kind of a general introduction to the Learning Lab if this is your first time checking out the site. You'd like to learn a little bit more about what you can do here. I can also help if you need help with a tool on the Learning Lab, or maybe you want to learn how to do something new, like, for example, create your first Learning Lab collection or add some interactivity to one you've already created. Or I can help too with finding a resource or a collection around a topic that you're interested in. So I'll be answering questions throughout today's session, and the direction of these office hours will really depend on the questions that come in. So if you have a question, you can ask it at any time using one of the following two methods, depending on the way that you're joining us today. So if you're joining us on YouTube, you can enter your question at any time using the chat box. And if you're joining us on Facebook, you can enter your question using the comment box. Again, I'll be answering questions as they come in. Let me throw up my banner too. So you can ask questions at any time today. I'm here to answer your questions, and I can answer them using screen sharing on the lab. I'm going to switch over to the lab live in a moment. So with that said, let's go over to the Learning Lab. The URL is here on the screen, learninglab.si.edu, and I've gotten open in another tab here. So to get us started off with, while I wait for questions to come in, the Learning Lab is a free online platform where you can discover digital museum resources from across the Smithsonian and beyond, create interactive learning experiences with them, and share your discoveries and creations with others. If you'd like a more in-depth introduction to what the lab is, what you can find here, the tools that are available to you, and the ways that you can share, just let me know in the chat. I'd be happy to walk you through it. So because the direction of these office hours really depends on the questions that come in, while I wait for the first question, actually, I just received a question now. If you're watching right now and it takes a moment for me to respond to your question, just know that there's a little bit of lag between when you hit enter and when I see it on my end. But as soon as I see it, I'll answer it. So I see I have a question here from Abby. A question about deleting items. Thanks for tuning in, Abby. Please feel free to let me know more about your question in the chat. I would love to help. And while I wait for you to type up and send your question, I'll just kind of hold for a moment. If you see me looking over to the side, I have a cat who's hanging out with me. We'll see if he makes an appearance today. Something I can share too while I wait for the second part of this question to come in is I mentioned during my introduction that we recently launched a help center on the lab. This is the new place where you can find all of the webinars like this one that are available to you, as well as step-by-step instructions on how to do just about everything on the lab. So to get to the Help Center, what you'll do is at the bottom of every page of the lab, including the home page, you'll see some links at the bottom of the screen. Look for the one that says Help. This will send you to our Help Center. So here you'll find step-by-step instructions to do everything on the lab, including discover, create, and share. both through instructions on the side panel and a PDF that's downloadable here. You'll also find archived sessions and upcoming sessions focusing on some different things like getting started in the lab, how to create collections. I'm actually going to be hosting that one next Monday. All of our online office hours for the month, a cultivating learning session that's coming up with two wonderful National Portrait Gallery educators who are going to be walking us through engaging young learners with portraiture, and then a couple playlists of archived sessions that we've held previously. So I wanted to just highlight this as a resource that I hope will be helpful to all of you moving forward. So Abby, I'm still waiting for part 2 of your question. If you'd like to send it in, I'd be happy to help you with deleting items. While I wait for part 2 of this question to come in, or for any other questions to come in, I'm going to turn off my webcam for a moment, but I will be back as soon as I receive our next question. For those of you joining, you can ask a question at any time using the chat box if you're joining us on YouTube, or the comment box if you're joining us on Facebook. I'm going to be answering questions throughout today's session. Again, while I wait for the next question to come in, I'm going to turn off my webcam, but I will still be here, still watching the chat, and I'll come back as soon as the next question arrives. So, see you soon. Hello again, everybody. Hi, Abby. Welcome back. I'll be watching for your question in the chat. For everybody else who's joining us right now, welcome. We're right at the beginning of this afternoon's online office hours with the Smithsonian Learning Lab. My name is Tess Porter, and I'm an educator and digital content producer on the Learning Lab. And I'm here to help with any questions you have over the next hour that office hours is running. So if you have a question, you can enter it at any time using the chat box if you're joining us on YouTube, or the comment box if you're joining us on Facebook. All right, Abby, I see part 2 of your question came in. In the My Assignments section, I accidentally posted the same things 3 or 4 times, and I can't get it to delete. I'm just hosting it up here for a moment so folks on Facebook can see the comment too. So, Abby, thank you for letting us know. So, let's go over to the assignments page. So, the assignments page of the lab is one of the places of the lab that is most under construction. And if I remember correctly, you may not be able to delete assignments, but you may be able to archive them. But we also may have changed things, so let me have a look. So for others who are watching who aren't as familiar with assignments, you can assign collections to students to collect their feedback within the lab. I'm screen sharing the lab right now, and I'm already logged into my Learning Lab account. And to get over to my assignments, I clicked on this assignments button here. So here are all of the assignments that I've developed as a user of the lab. And you'll see that there are quite a few testing ones because I do a lot of testing on the lab to build out new features. So just familiarizing myself with this. So yes, it's what I thought. So you can't delete assignments at this time in the lab, though it's something that we're looking at building out in the future. For now, you can leave them be. They won't affect anything on your account or anything with your students. It'll just kind of hang out here on this page. As we continue building out the assignments tool, we're hoping to build the ability to kind of make this more customizable, make it so that you can delete things or archive things that you aren't using anymore, and hopefully also integrate it with some other learning management systems. So again, right now you can't delete it. You'll want to leave it be. I hope that helps, Abby. Let me know if you have any other questions. I'm happy to continue chatting with you and walking through some of these things. I'll take a moment again to the rest of the folks watching. I see we have a few people in the room. Welcome. We're in the middle of online office hours right now, and I am here to help with any questions you have about the Learning Lab. I'm an educator and digital content producer on the lab, and I can walk through really anything you're curious about. So ranging from a general introduction to what the lab is, if this is your first time using the site, a deeper dive into how to use some of the tools and features on the site. If you'd like to learn how to do something new, like add a sorting activity to a collection you're working on, I can also help you find something that you're looking for, maybe a resource or a collection on a topic you're interested in. So again, if you have a question, you can enter it using the chat box if you're joining us on YouTube, or the comment box if you're joining us on Facebook. I'm answering questions as they come in. Sometimes there's a few seconds lag between when you hit enter on your question and when I see it, but as soon as I see it on my end, I'll be sure to get to it. While I wait for the next question to come in this afternoon, I'm going to turn off my webcam for a moment, but I will still be here, still watching the chat, and I'll come back as soon as the next question arrives. Oh, and the next question just arrived. Hey, Abby. So can you please go over the best way to set up a lesson made up of different Smithsonian resources for a homeschooled student? So this is a great question, Abby. Thank you so much for sending it in, and I'm just highlighting it on the screen for others to see too. So there's not just one best way to make a lesson. It really depends on what kinds of resources that you want to use with your student, and the way that you'd like to dig into the resource with them. However, I can show some examples of collections that might be helpful to you as you think about ways to bring resources to your student. I'm a former homeschooled kid, so I hope these ideas will be helpful. So the first one I'm going to show you is a really simple collection. It's an aggregation of a bunch of really interesting resources with some questions to help students dive in. And this one, I'm not sure how old your student is. This was a collection developed by an elementary educator. Specifically, what she was trying to do in this collection is provide opportunities for students to talk with their caregivers or teachers about a topic of interest in a way that really engaged them with the resources that they were looking at. So I had a look at one of these today. She has like 30 of them, all around different topics. The one that I looked at earlier today was about skateboarding. So the way I'm going to find this is I'm going to type in my search term in the search bar. So it's always going to be in the upper left of your screen, no matter where you are in the lab. And as I type in my search term, I'm getting suggestions for both resources and collections. And actually, Ellen Rogers is the teacher who created this one. So it came up in my suggestions right away. So I'm going to click on it. So like I said, this is a simple aggregation of resources, but it's a really interesting one too. Ellen says that she created this collection for families to do together while schools are closed. She would create these collections and send them to her students every day last spring. So what she does is she pulls together just a set of resources and a question to help students dive into them. Or a series of questions, excuse me. This is a Project Zero thinking routine, which is one of a series of routines of questions that help provide structure and, when used over time, can help students build thinking skills. So here, this routine is: what do you see? What do you think about that? And what does it make you wonder? And this routine in particular really helps students slow down, make careful observations and interpretations based on evidence, as well as setting the stage for further inquiry. And so in this collection, what she wanted to do for this activity is just have students look through these resources and think about what they see. What do you think about that? And what does that make them wonder? So something as simple as this can be a really wonderful way of diving into resources. And what Ellen did here, she gathered, not only objects, but photographs and videos and a website where they could learn more about this topic. And then she presented some next steps for further exploration. So as an educator, she designed a few opportunities for students to kind of take this thinking further. Specifically here through some making opportunities for building a ramp, creating a skate park design, or designing a new skateboard. She has a lot of collections that follow this structure, so if you're interested in seeing more, you can see collections created by Ellen by clicking on her name right here. That'll bring you to her profile page. As you think about building out collections to use with your student, you might also think about, a really good activity. It doesn't have to be something with that many resources. You can have a really fruitful discussion by just concentrating on one thing. So let me think for a moment. There are just so many collections on the lab. I'm trying to think of one that dives deeply and looks closely at just one resource. Let me show you one that I developed. So because I'm logged into my account, I can easily find my profile page by going here. Here's my account. And here is a collection that I developed. So this collection just focuses on one portrait. And in designing this activity, I really wanted students to look closely at this portrait and think about some elements of portraiture that might tell us a little bit more just through what is depicted in the portrait about who this person is, how others saw them, and how they saw themselves. As a pathway to learning more about this individual. His name is Long Tak Sam. So I explain a little bit about that in my description. You can find this by searching portrait analysis or his name, Long Tak Sam. And what I did here that might be helpful to you is I used some of the lab's tools to build an activity that was ready for an older student to go through independently. I used it to build in some instructions and suggestions for looking and questions for them to consider. So clicking on this resource here, let me back up for a moment. So as you look at collections in the lab, anytime you see a yellow paperclip on a resource, then that means the creator of a collection has attached something to this resource. So I can click on it to view what that is. The first thing that I attached here are some questions. These I used, I pulled from the National Portrait Gallery's Guide to Looking at Portraiture, which is also included later in the collection. It's a wonderful resource if you're looking for ways to engage students with portraiture. So I adapted and used some of those questions here to help students look closely at this and think about the expression of this figure. What might his clothing say about him? Thinking about the setting, thinking about why this poster might have been created and who they think this individual might be based on all of the clues available to them here. Then I use an information tab to follow up with some, in this case, biographical information about who this individual is. Long Tak Sam was a vaudeville performer who was an acrobat and a magician. So I have some information about who he is here. If you'd like to see information about the resource from the museum that holds it, I can find that information through the Information tab. For this specific activity, since I meant it to be used by students directly, I did a little bit of hiding of it, but it's still here available through one more click. And actually, that biographical information that I pulled in that you saw earlier, I pulled right from here. And then I follow this up with some more questions. I pulled in another thinking routine. This one's called Think, Puzzle, Explore, to help students think about what they've learned, what questions they still have, and further areas for inquiry. And then later in the collection, I include some more collections for diving in, learning more about him through a great blog post from the Portrait Gallery, a documentary about his life, and then here's that fantastic reading portraiture guide I mentioned that presents some of these questions that are fantastic for looking at portraits. So those are just two examples, Abby, about kind of different ways that collections can be used to create lessons, but there are so many more on the lab. I'd highly encourage you to search through the lab and look at collections that people are creating around the topics that you're interested in teaching with your student. There are so many wonderful kind of sources of inspiration. Before I get to your other two questions, I just wanted to highlight one more thing. You might find helpful ideas through collections created through a project called Museums Go Global. All of these collections are tagged with the hashtag Go Global. So if I were to search that, it's first going to show me resources related to my search term. But then if I click the Learning Lab Collections tab, I can see collections related to the search term. There are collections created here by educators through the whole K through 12 spectrum and across many different subject areas. So science, English language arts, art, social studies, and I think you'll find a lot of really great ideas for even more ways that you can engage students with digital museum resources using the lab as a helper platform. So I won't go too in depth in this one, but this is a really lovely one. It's one of my favorites. It's one that is designed for science students, helping them think about ways to advocate for environmental issues that they have studied and that they really care about. So here, what she does is she gathers a great group of resources, but she also pulls together information about how she used this with her own students. So you'll find a lot of this in the lab where educators are sharing the way that they approached teaching about these subjects and using these resources so that other educators can adapt and use their approach. So this collection is called Environmental Advocacy Through Art. I found it by searching for the hashtag #GoGlobal. So let me turn back to the chat. I know you sent a couple other questions here, and I want to get to them. So before I answer the question, just turning around my screens. Okay, so second question. Can I store something in collections and then post it in the assignments area for my daughter? Is assignments the best place for her to post her work so she can find it easily? That is a great question. So yes, and let me talk more about that. So when you develop collections, let me navigate to my collections page to talk a little bit more about this. So when you create a collection for the first time, it is unpublished and just viewable to you, and those you send the URL to. Published collections are ones that you publish and make available in the lab for people to, all across the learning lab to search and discover. Whether they are you can create assignments from both published and unpublished collections. And the really nice thing about assignments, as you've probably seen as you've been playing around with the assignments tool, is it does allow you to aggregate responses from your learner within the platform. So, you can assign a collection to your student or your daughter, and then receive her responses through the platform as she navigates through the assignment. So I think, if I'm understanding your oh my goodness, reading and talking at the same time. If I'm understanding your question correctly, yes, the way that you're doing this of storing something in assignments, creating something in assignment, or I'm sorry, talking too fast. The way that you're thinking about creating and storing things in collections and then posting it in assignments for your daughter works very well. You might also consider, depending on what you're building, sending her a link to the collection that you've created if it doesn't require her to send responses back to you. So for example, if I go back to my collections page, if I pulled, and I do have this in my unpublished collections, I have collections of things that I just think are really interesting, but I don't have any structure built into it yet. I can share that with someone else just by copying the URL and sending it to them. So I hope that answer with all of my stumbling made sense, and it was helpful, Abby. Let me go to your next question. So if I use other collections from other people, can I be assured that my daughter won't be led off the Smithsonian sites and into the wider internet? That's a great question too, Abby. So as you navigate through and find collections that have been published by other people on the lab, people can include links to external websites in the collections that they create. Part of this is because while the Smithsonian has a lot, we don't have everything. And so we wanted to create opportunities for educators to link out to resources from the National Archives or, a YouTube video that really helps dive into this topic. However, every time that there's a link to an external website within a collection, it does warn the user that they'll be navigating off of the Smithsonian Learning Lab to access this resource. Additionally, as collections are published in the Learning Lab, we have a team of volunteers who review everything to make sure that it adheres to the Smithsonian terms of use. So that's making sure that there's no inappropriate content, no spam. And so those collections that are published, are safe for your child to use. If you would like to have a little bit more control about kind of where your student navigates to within a collection, you might consider copying and adapting a collection that someone else creates to remove those external links. And maybe there are opportunities to bring in additional resources that would be helpful in their place. So, for example, this is a Smithsonian affiliate museum, the Esperanto's Mexican American Center. They create a lot of collections on the lab. If I wanted, I could copy this collection to my own account to adapt however I need to. The button to do that is right up here in the top right. It's the two squares overlapping. Clicking this will create a copy of a collection to my account so I can adapt it however I need. So I hope that helps, Abby. All right, let me read your next questions. Okay, let me take the two ones together. So I think you will absolutely find good resources for hard science in the lab. And I think, the resources that I point you to depend on the age of your student. But one place that you might look as a starting point is the profile or the collections published by the National Air and Space Museum. So I happen to know their URL off the top of my head, and I'm going to go there directly. I'm also going to put the link here in the chat. So here you're going to find all of the collections that the National Air and Space Museum has created and published. And you're going to find a lot of really great hard science collections here. One of the things that the Air and Space Museum does in their collections that I really appreciate is that in many of them, they include full lesson plans for teachers to adapt however they need. So here's one collection, Engineering Mars Spacecraft. So you can see here what they've done is they've started off with some resources for teachers, including a Google slide document, a Google Doc of variables to use in the activity, and a graphic organizer that a teacher could use. Then they've included some great resources, which include images and videos. And then they've got some resources for students, including a worksheet, that graphic organizer again, a blog post, and then they've got a great video from the museum with an educator talking about the specific subject. So I think you'll find a lot of really rich science resources through here. You'll also find many others on the Learning Lab in general. So if you're looking for specifically science collections, something that you can do is on the home page, if you go to the Discover section, right here in this gray bar, we have some starting points for finding collections. One of these is science. If you click on that, it'll bring you to a filtered search with all of the science collections that are currently available on the lab. So we've got 801, which is pretty great. And from here, you can either get started by clicking through and seeing what you find. Let's switch this to newest first instead of oldest. And then you can continue to filter this. So say, hey, I just want to dive into Earth and space sciences. I'm interested in just collections created by Smithsonian educators. You can do all of that to narrow down and find something that'll be helpful to you. You can also filter by age range here. So I hope that helps in finding resources for the type of science that you're talking about. You will also find plenty of resources, not just collections, but resources that'll help you dive into this. I'm thinking of videos from not only the Air and Space Museum, but of course also the National Museum of Natural History, kind of diving into a wide range of science topics. There are also other museums that have wonderful science resources available, like the National Museum of African American History and Culture. They have a great set of activities looking at the architectural structure of the museum and how it works to take care of the heat in the building through the way that it lets light in from outside. And there are some great collections from the Hirshhorn that I've seen recently that involve not only art, but thinking about the science with art. So there's a lot there, and I would be happy to point you down some more avenues if that would be helpful. And then I see your other question here. Sorry, it took me so long to get to it. But when I was talking about sending a link, I meant by copying and sending, I believe, the URL of the collection. So let's navigate to this one here as an example. This is from Project Phaedra, which is out of the Center for Astrophysics that's held between the Smithsonian and Harvard. They have a couple really great collections too, focusing on science. So say I wanted to send this directly to, my student or to someone else too. In my browser, all I would need to do is copy the link and send it to someone else. Here's my Learning Lab friend. You can also copy and send a short version of the collection by going to the share button here. It's 3 circles interconnected. It's going to give me a few different options. I can share this collection on social media, via email, or copy a short link. So yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about sending a link. So I hope that was helpful, Abby. Of course, if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat. I'd love to keep talking with you. For other folks who are watching right now, welcome. My name is Tess Porter, and I'm an educator and digital content producer at the Smithsonian Learning Lab. And you're joining us for today's online office hours, which we hold just about every Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. These office hours are a time to ask any questions you have about the Learning Lab and hopefully get some answers that will help. So I'm here throughout the hour from 4 to 5 answering questions that come in about the lab. So if you have a question, you can ask it at any time using the chat box on YouTube or the comment box on Facebook. I can help with things like a general introduction to the Learning Lab if this is your first time checking out the site and you're looking for a place to begin to understand what the site is and how it works. I can help with some more in-depth tutorials. For example, if you want to learn how to create your first collection or add some interactivity to a collection you're working on. I can also help you find a resource or collection around a specific topic you're interested in. So already during this hour, we've been talking about a lot of different things, but including collections for science, ideas for building collections to engage with students, the way that assignments work, and more. So again, if you have a question, feel free to enter it at any time during the chat. I'm answering questions as they come in. So another question here about posting a link. So can I post a link on my dashboard for her, or does she need an email address? So there are a couple different ways you could handle that. I think part of it depends on if you're using the same computer or if you're using separate computers. You might, I'm just thinking this through for a moment. Without an email address, you might find it easiest to assign collections to her as you've been doing before, because that would make it very easy to share the collection with her, without her needing an account. You can also publish your collection. That would make it available in search for others to find and access. And I think would be helpful to other educators too, if you're interested in sharing what you're working on with them. If you are sharing a computer, you might also consider bookmarking the collections that you'd like to share with her, whether they're ones that you've created or ones that others have created that you'd like to share. And then when she logs into her account, when she opens those bookmarks, that will lead her to the collections. So, a couple different ways to think about doing that. Within the lab itself, because of privacy, specifically protecting children's privacy, there aren't a lot of communication features that you might find on other platforms, save for the assignment feature, which is really, for an educator and learners to use. So I think those are the different ways that I would approach doing that. I hope that helps. If you have any other questions, please let me know. And again, for other folks watching, if you have any questions too, please feel to plug them into the chat. I'm answering questions throughout this hour from 4 to 5 about the Learning Lab, and I'd love to help you if you need some help on the lab. So you can plug in a question that you have at any time using the chat box or the comment box, depending on the platform you're joining us on today. Sometimes there's a little bit of lag between when you hit enter on your question and when I see it on my end, but I promise I'll get to it as soon as I see it. While I wait for the next question to come in, I'm going to turn off my camera for a moment, but I will still be here, still watching the chat, and I'll come back as soon as the next question arrives. So, see you soon. All right, hello and welcome to those of you who are just joining us. My name is Tess Porter, and I am an educator and digital content producer at the Smithsonian Learning Lab. And welcome to Online Office Hours, and an hour that we hold just about every Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m., where you can ask questions about the Smithsonian Learning Lab and get some answers. So I can help with many different things related to the Smithsonian Learning Lab. If you have a question, you can enter it at any time using the chat box if you're joining us on YouTube, or the comment box if you're joining us on Facebook. I've been answering questions as they come in today. So we've talked about a few different things already, like how to use the lab's assignment feature, examples of creating learning lab collections to use with students, places to get science resources, and more. I can also help with things like a general introduction to the Learning Lab if this is your first time hearing about the site and you want to learn more about what it is and how it works. I can help with step-by-step tutorials on how to use some of the lab's features. Like, for example, if you'd like to build a Learning Lab collection and want to learn how to do so, I can help. I can also help you find resources or collections related to a topic that you're interested in. So again, if you have a question, you can enter it at any time using the chat box if you're joining us on YouTube, or the comment box if you're joining us on Facebook. Sometimes there's a little bit of lag between when you hit enter and when I see your question, but I will get to it as soon as I see it. While I wait for questions to come in, I'm going to turn off my webcam, but I will still be here, still watching the chat, and I'll come back as soon as the next question arrives. So, see you soon. All right, hello again, everyone, and welcome to Smithsonian Learning Lab online office hours. We're reaching the end of office hours for today, though I still have some time for questions if you have any that you've been holding on to. You can ask a question at any time using the chat box if you're joining on YouTube or the comment box if you're joining on Facebook. I have been answering questions as they come in and would be happy to help you with whatever you need today. While I wait for any final questions to come in, I just wanted to highlight again the new Help Center that we launched last week. You can find the Help Center on the bottom of every page on the lab. So you're seeing the home page of the lab right now. Scrolling down to the bottom, and here next to a lot of other links, you'll find Help. Clicking this will bring you to the Help Center. You'll find a lot of different things here, including our Getting Started guide, which will walk you through kind of everything you need to know about the lab. So if you'd like a reminder of something we talked about earlier in the session today, like how to search for resources, you can click on Search for Resources and Collections here in the sidebar. It'll bring you to some instructions and a gift too for getting started step by step. On this page, in addition to the getting started ideas, if you scroll down, you'll also find upcoming and archived webinars exploring how to use digital museum resources in many different ways. So you'll find things like a webinar that my colleague held just yesterday on getting started in the Learning Lab, if you'd like a step-by-step walkthrough on how to get started. A session next Monday that I'm hosting that's focusing more closely on how to build Learning Lab collections. If you'd like some help, you can join on that session. It'll air live at 4 p.m. It's an interactive session, so I'll be here live again, though it'll also be archived and made available here afterward. You can find our schedule of upcoming office hours sections. So if you'd like some time to experiment with some things that we talked about today and then want to connect back with my colleague next week, Philippa, she'll be hosting next Tuesday's session. You are more than welcome to. You find all the dates and times here. And then we've got some special things, especially for educators, as you think about ways to use museum digital resources with your students. So a few different playlists of archived webinars that we've held over the years, diving into many different ways to use digital museum resources for learning. And then we also have one upcoming session at the end of the month to be held on Monday, March 29th. This session is going to be with two fantastic educators at the National Portrait Gallery who are going to be talking about how to use portraiture, movement, and art making to engage young learners with art. If that's of interest to you, please join us. It'll be Monday, March 29th at 4 p.m. But like all of our other sessions, it'll also be made archived and available at the same link that it airs live. So you'll find it here on the Help Center and on YouTube and Facebook too. Additionally, if you have any questions for our team between now and next Tuesday, we are still available to help. You can send us an email at any time using the contact button. So if you look down at the question mark down here and click contact us, it'll give you a little overlay where you can get in touch with our team about any questions you have. So don't hesitate to use this as you move forward in the week. So it doesn't look like there are any more questions for this Tuesday's online office hours. Again, the Help Center is available to you, and so are so is our team via the Contact Us button on the Learning Lab. But for those of you who joined today, thank you so much for your questions. I hope my answers were helpful, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. So have a great Tuesday. Bye.